This is interview 14, drugs as a tool of enlightenment. When on drugs and while on drugs, the association or the neural pathways that have learned to trigger the higher dimensional levels or the higher dimensional lessons in programmed experiences can be assessed while on drugs or types of stimulants. Please look up these words. They will be important in the future. So it's better that you start researching them now so that you understand exactly what these words are. What I'm trying to say is that your brain operates on recognition. So if the neural pathways are learned, which means that if you learn something, it stores it in your brain exactly in that manner. And what happens is that if it learns something, in the future it stores it into a template. And your template basically is a psychological term, meaning that it stores it, and if it recognizes the memory, not the memory, but the stimulus, which is the event or something that's happening, it triggers and it says, I remember this memory. And it basically it tells you what the memory is and all of the experiences, so that when you're at that moment, you say, oh, I know what this is. Well, this is the possible outcome, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And basically what it does is that it does this so that to protect yourself, to gain experience, and to learn something, or to avoid it. Those are the ways that your memory acts. And while we're there, when we're doing drugs, it does these things. And what happens in this case, in this, what I'm saying in this moment, is that you have your brain, the way it learns, and how it recalls memories. But what it does is that because there's this thing called the God gene, it turns on automatically when you're doing drugs. But it does something very funny. It doesn't connect directly to it. It connects around it. And you have to make the connections towards the God gene to become enlightenment. But I'm going to explain later why this is a good thing. It's a cheat, but it's very hard because it makes it harder for you. So what they do is they give you that extra connection, and then they take it away from you, and pull it back, and it's because you're cheating. But anyways, let me explain, and don't take it the wrong way. At this moment in time, this is necessary, and ecstasy was manufactured for this purpose. So please let me continue and explain that if you do the work, that you actually will reach enlightenment. And in fact, about an extra 3 million people have reached enlightenment, partial enlightenment, in 2 months, because they were disciplined enough to pull out the information that was necessary from the field or the human consciousness. So let me please explain. While being in the same environment, this also increases the chances of gaining the same experiences or reliving the same experiences, How spiritual evolution operates is that once you have gained entry into certain experiences that are the same, you are reliving only a memory of the experience. And this is very important. But only the people and the moment and the stimuli, the experience, but a different song gives the experimenter you a delusion that the experience is real and different, when in fact it is not. If the drug or drugs are just for pleasure, as it is in the beginning, then it would not have your euphoric associations like alcohol does, and just those associations, or just that feeling only. But this is not true, as alcohol is an inhibitor and really only dampens stress and inhibits let me explain. Alcohol and its effects only makes one feel and do things that are out of character, like doing wild behavior, which an inhibitor does, and in particular what those do to your synaptic neurons. But for the most part, alcohol does mask stress, so it is most satisfying. Therefore, doing drugs for their manipulated gains of chemical effects are just that, just like cosmetics, but chemical. With this, you must eventually come to the conclusion that stimulants, and especially those that activate the transmitters, such as serotonin and high levels of dopamine, in fact activate special genes inside your brain that help your personal experience, that help the person's experience a moment of ascension, be it from music, love, mild telepathy, hallucinations. Very different from delusions. That the experimenter must conclude are manufactured by their intentions, which over many trials, if they are experimenting and not just relapsing for the feeling, meaning that they're just after the feeling, the pleasure of escaping, which is also called escapism, that is drugs, then the process of chemical enlightenment transmutes into a mental ascension. Another thing, when you're doing drugs, and I know a lot of you that do E, because of my experiences with E, basically, because ecstasy makes you relaxed and you're rolling, it makes you feel better. And alcohol brings you to that state, calming state. Because it does that, it just really is just an association where you're thinking, oh, this equals happiness. So, because the memories are so close together, the experience of happiness and happiness, the bridges and connections, they call them synapses, not synapses, but they're like your wires. The more wires you have to a memory, the better the experience. The intensity increases. So, I mean, there are connections there to that pleasure principle, that thing, the same thing as happiness. It's like, I like playing hockey and I like playing floor hockey. It's the same thing, but they're not the same. So the connections are there. This is hockey, stick. So basically, that's what it is. And, because of that, you're going to get confused, and a person can transcend into that moment where because they have learned to associate that feeling with alcohol, they can merge that feeling, and then now it becomes a form of how can I say this? Of cross-referencing moments, dualism in that sense, dualistic, not dualism, but dualistic in the sense that they can merge those realities and make it a form of happiness, not escapism, but just happiness. Because when you get better, you'll learn how to manufacture those chemicals to make you feel better. Please go to interview 13A and 13 to understand what I mean by that, because you can reach chemical enlightenment. That means that you can manufacture the same chemicals that ecstasy does, minus being high for like 3 or 4 hours straight. But I mean, if you get really good at it, you can do this for like 10-20 minutes non-stop, and it's natural and it won't harm you at all. So doing drugs are more than just pleasure or retreat from negative experiences. They are tools for learning to access another vibrational dimension. Therefore, they must be viewed as pleasant first, and then experiment after they've learned that it's more than pleasure. After this realization, a self-realization of knowing, a form of gnosis. Gnosis is basically to know from within, meaning God is within, as Jesus says, God is within. So gnosis is very, very secret teachings of knowing God by connecting through God, which is your heart. And from doing that, you'll learn secret knowledge. But I mean, you can't do that unless you've developed the connections. In the beginning, it's given freely when you do drugs, and when you reach a certain age of ascension, when you start doing your tests of deprogramming and the tests of heaven and hell, which will also be covered in the second segment of the interview, you become to connect more to that. So, how this can be is that users understand that an extra-dimensional interface is taking place. Knowing it as a matter of fact only takes maturity and time. After specific neurons in your brains are activated, much like learning high school math, and certain fundamentals are learned, like behavioral observation, and the understanding of human desires, sins and virtues, which, if you don't know, you still do it at the subconscious level. When you're at this point of your ascension process, the brain sets up open special neural pathways that start your enlightenment process. So what that means is it activates the certain segments of the God gene. It's called the pyramid of learning, and you have your first, second, third, and from there it goes into like segments of learning. What happens is that sometimes you can get trapped at certain segments, so we'll talk about that later. And after specific neurons on your brain are activated, much like so for the youths without these emotional and logical abilities, that the experiment with drugs therefore is experiencing pleasure only, because they don't understand what's going on. However, because these specific enlightenment neurons are activated, the youth will in fact have ascension experiences relayed to them. And this is where they can get trapped repeatedly, but will not understand them, as the message to them cannot be understood from lack of maturity. And all of these experiences, like I'm hungry and then all of a sudden the hamburger truck rolls by, and or I'm feeling lucky and today, and all of a sudden you find a sale item that you've always wanted. Avoiding accidents via telepathic sensing, and the same voice that you heard that told you not to board the train, and then all of a sudden there's an accident. This kind of sensing becomes more defined. It's concrete, and it's more of a 100% two-way communication. And it's because certain neurons in your brains are activating to allow telepathy, to allow extrasensory perception, where you can sense things better than you already do now. It's so funny because it's like, oh, I get this vibe, I get this experience, I get this person's looking at me, and it's all true.